What if the gods are some of the most law-abiding citizens in the universe? What if they are law-abiding not because they have to, not because they're somehow afraid of being punished by the great cosmic sheriff, but because they have understood something that most men don't? And that is that true power, true meaning, and even freedom comes not from rebellion, but actually from aligning yourself to the fundamental laws of reality. What that means is something that we will look closer at today. The idea of spiritual fundamental laws of reality is not some mystical woo-woo idea. Actually, all great civilizations, they knew this, that greatness, they come from order, and order is objective. The Romans, for example, they built their empire that ended up dominating the world for many centuries. It's the longest living empire on the planet, because they were aligning themselves with natural law. And they did this through, as we know, through discipline and a very rigorous system of laws, but also most importantly, what they said was most importantly, that they did this through ritual, through communing with the gods. And this was a way to mirror the celestial order on also earth, which sounds familiar, right? Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And now, I don't want to make the Romans to some kind of glorious example that we should all live up to and just go back to the good old days, because I don't believe that's true. They for sure made mistakes, but they also for sure were onto something that was right. Like, you don't build the greatest and longest living empire in history just by chance. They did get something right, and also the worship of Jupiter as the god of godly order and justice was significant. And it is a very significant ideal that I think we can learn a lot from, of this aspiration of mirroring the celestial order on earth. And that this was, as they saw it, the source of their greatness. So we have this example of celestial order connected to greatness in the Roman Empire, but still, most men today, even those who look up to the Roman Empire, they live in constant friction with these universal laws and principles. They are fighting with the current, we can say, instead of flowing with it. And this brings the experience, and I'm sure we all can relate to, of feeling lost or feeling unfocused or feeling weak, as if we don't really have any great visions about our lives, and even if we do, we don't really know how we can really put them into practice in a way that feels meaningful and uncompromised. And even those who have this stronger ambition, they can also lack clarity. We also see this a lot in like the examples we have in movies of so-called great men and powerful men, that their visions, even if they have them, they are not good, to put it simple. Like we see, for the Godfather and all these guys who Hollywood somehow teaches us to look up to because of their power, but at the same time it's very obvious that they are corrupting their soul in the pursuit of this greatness. So there are different effects here we can see of this not being aligned with universal laws. One of them is that you're powerless, the other one is that you have power, but it is a corrupting power. And another interesting notion of this is that the men who have this longing for greatness, for them it often crystallizes around the idea of nobility, as we also can see in The Godfather again, and also as new in series like Yellowstone, where there is a certain aspiration for building an empire, for being a king of your world. That is how this idea of, or ideal of greatness manifests. But what is ironic with it is that this nobility and greatness, the way they pursue it is by revolting against the universal laws that the nobility actually is supposed to protect. Because from a spiritual perspective, the noble class, they very seldom live up to it, but the ideal of it is that those are the ones who are closest to God. Those are the ones who are the closest to fulfilling and living in accordance with universal laws and principles. And therefore, they can act as bridges of manifesting God's will also on earth, that they can bridge the celestial order with the earthly order, which is actually also what we have in the Roman, what do you call it? Like the Roman title Pontifex, which means a bridge or bridge builder. And the nobility traditionally has had this role. We also see that again in Plato's Republic of the philosopher kings being those who actually are abiding by cosmic law and therefore can manifest it on earth. But then ironically, those who are the most hungry for power in our world are not necessarily those who are most concerned with acting in accordance with cosmic laws, even though that is actually what the nobility is supposed to do. They're supposed to protect these laws. Today we're going to introduce one of the most powerful models for understanding the laws of reality. We're not going to list the laws of reality, that's for another time, but to give a model of understanding that they exist and how they exist and what a process of actually tuning oneself to them might look. And this is a model that the greatest men of Western history, where we might include Pythagoras and Caesar and Aquinas and many others, they understood this model as the key to power, focus, and meaning. It's a model that, when embraced, will help you to come back in harmony with this celestial order. And it's a model that Pythagoras called the music of the spheres. Every civilization has discovered the hard way that there are certain laws that govern reality. And every man at some point has tried to cheat them. Like, we all have experience with that, I'm sure, of knowing what is right, knowing what we should do and what is good, but thinking, maybe I can, cheat my way to success. Maybe I can cut some corners here. And it never works out. As Jordan Peterson likes to say, it's like we always pay the piper. We can't make compromises and expect to get away with it. But instead, this corner cutting, it always leads to us learning that ignoring reality will lead to chaos and to suffering. And that only by submitting to the laws of reality can we actually reach true success in all ways, be it in business or just, happiness or anything. Not that happiness is just in any way. And this wisdom, which we can call it, is reflected in what the Romans would call the mos maiorum, excuse my pronunciation there, which means the way of the ancestors. It's a form of code of conduct that governed war, politics, family, and personal life, which of course is built over generations with experience. A lot of men trying to cut corners and then realizing, hey, this is not really how we do it. We need to do it right. And then this how to do it right becomes encoded in this mos maiorum. And for them it was clear that those who followed the mos maiorum, the path of the ancestors, they would thrive. They lived good lives, they had successful businesses and happy marriages. And those who didn't, they would not lead happy lives, but they would become lost to fate and not bring anything of value to the world or to themselves. We see also the same notion in many other moral systems. We have it in the Christian commandments, we have it in Stoic precepts, where Plutarch, for example, wrote the Moralia with just like a lot of examples of how to behave. And also we see it in the yamas and niyamas of the yogis, which are all, though different, similar system based on the same idea. It's also key in the cardinal virtue of prudence, which have taught Christians for many generations to see things as they are, so that they can make sound judgments. Where in this example, or when it comes to prudence, it's more of the ability to see clearly rather than only having like the moral reference points in terms of codes of conduct. But it all comes together. The Mos Maiorum, the path of the ancestors, it served for the Romans as a sort of map over this moral reality. And modern men who are raised to see things from a more scientific lens might ask, what is the objectivity of this? Like, why is one moral system more true than another? And why can't we just make up our own moral system? Why can't we believe what we want to believe in order to serve our own interests? And this last part there is coincidentally what the Satanist motto is actually about, do what thou wilt. That it is this idea of, well, we can just do whatever we want. There is no objective right and wrong. Everything is just, law of the jungle. So we can come up with our own morals that serves our own interest, and then, yippee-ki-yay. But at a closer look, that actually makes absolutely no sense, and we will soon find out why. And here the model of the music of the spheres comes in as a very elegant answer. The way Pythagoras saw the universe, which we also see echoed in Plato and also in modern physics, is that the universe is vibratory. We can see it as a grand orchestral symphony where every planet, every season, every species and human being has its own frequency. It's playing its own chord, so to say. And if everything is sound, then the secret to living a powerful, focused, and efficient participation in this larger symphony of life is to tune yourself to the right frequency. Now, this is of course very reductionist. It's not just about tuning yourself to the right frequency, but we have this idea coming in here that it is an orchestra that we need to play along with. And being in tune is of course, the first thing we need to do, but then there's also learning to play scales, understanding harmony, understanding our place, understanding to relate to everything else that's going on and integrate harmoniously in it. So, but it's the whole idea of this music of the spheres that the universe is a big orchestra, a big symphony where everything that is expressions of frequency, of patterns of frequency and energy. It's a very, very clear and very efficient model. So the key to what we could call an efficient participation in life is to be in key with this cosmic order instead of screaming over the noise. Because this is what we most of the time do when life around us seems to be just chaos and disorderly. Obviously, to some extent, it looks like it's harmonious. Things are, we are sticking together. I'm not floating around in a big cloud of atoms here. So to some extent, we all perceive order in life, but there's a lot of things that we don't understand. And this can be compared to not understanding musical theory well. So there's a lot of things going around in an orchestra, but unless we really can see how it's all connected and understand it, then it's difficult for us to, understand it, but also to know how we are participating in it. So when we are in these environments of life where we have a strong aspiration to make an impact, but we don't really understand the order around us, but we still want to make an impact, then the tendency we have is to, plug our ears, to ignore that there is a conductor there who is, giving us our place to play, and then instead just shout at the top of our lungs, to sing, but without being very good at singing, very loudly, out of key with the rest of the orchestra, and clashing with everyone around us. And the more it clashes, the more we feel that something is not right, the louder we scream in order to kind of drown out the noise. And this, of course, never works. We will never be able to out-sing the orchestra, but our only hope to actually participate in life efficiently is to tune into the orchestra and to be a part of it. And this problem of screaming at the top of our lungs in dissonance with the rest of the orchestra, this is what often happens when men are running after their own vague ideas of greatness, while failing to align themselves with the principles that actually govern success. And we see this a lot, that men have a tendency to have an aspiration for greatness, and then they have certain ideas of how that greatness would look. And that idea and the ideas of how to achieve that greatness is often not attuned with godly laws. And instead of finding out how to, tune themselves and their aspirations to fit in to the larger orchestra, to understand where is my place, where is my vision, where in the larger vision, like which part of the wonderful and great machinery of the universe am I supposed to build? Instead of finding their given place, they just run completely towards their own a bit distorted vision at the cost of everyone else, who of course are supposed to integrate with him and together build something beautiful. So in this way, failing to actually respect and understand the principles that govern success, these men, these would-be great men, they fail to integrate into the cosmic orchestra. And because of that, their lives are in constant dissonance, making them suffer more than they need to. Which is a pattern we can see in most great men's life. That even if they achieved wonderful things, we can also often see that there is some place in their story where things go wrong and their greatness takes over by megalomania or grandeur, and that pride makes them tune out of the orchestra, and instead of just serving a larger purpose, they are serving their own purpose, which eventually leads to their demise. And this is robbing them from the deeply meaningful life that is their birthright. Because true meaning and purpose is only felt when we actually are serving our given role. So, what is the solution to this? The traditional idea of the solution is to tune yourself to the Logos. In all traditions, the path to a masterful life is always about bringing yourself in harmony with the natural order, if we understand Logos as the structure of the universe, like the matrix that keeps everything together. And this is why it's so meaningful that Jesus is described to be the incarnation of the godly Logos. Not because the goal is to become a copy of Jesus, but because he is embodying a perfect alignment with the structure of reality, with the laws of reality. He is the archetypal man. He doesn't just know the rules of the game, but he is the rules of the game. And this is why true greatness isn't about blindly copying great men of the past, as we often see with this worship of great men whose acts we are trying to, do the same as they did so that we also can be great. Whether it is Jesus, Marcus Aurelius, or any other virtuous character that we look up to. Because we can see this from a metaphor of music again. Like imagine that you are a violinist and then you're looking up to a celloist who is brilliant. Now, you are very different. A celloist and a violinist are playing very, very differently, but they are playing according to the same musical theory. So what the celloist can learn from the violinist is not exactly how to play, but he can learn from his understanding of the musical theory. And in this way, the celloist can become really virtuous in his own instrument. But if the celloist is trying to play just like the violinist, that's not going to work well. A celloist who's trying to play with as quick fingers as the violinist it's just not going to work, and it's not going to fill his role as a celloist either. So the real task instead is to learn to tune and to play your own instrument and to live by the eternal laws while expressing your unique role in the grand symphony of life, whatever part that is for you to play. And we can see this idea expressed beautifully by Rousseau in Emile, where he is writing about education, that a well-educated man, he is ready for anything. He is a man of his time, man of his place, and of his world. He is complete in himself. And this idea is expressed in several points in this book. But what I found really beautiful about this is that it's obvious how by well-educated he is referring to a man who is attuned to the Logos. And because of that, he is ready for whatever life throws at him. He's not educated as we see today, like education as becoming an efficient cog in the machine. It's not education in the sense of becoming good at being a lawyer or becoming good at being a doctor, but education as in being good at being, understanding how to integrate the symphony of life so that whatever life throws at you, you can handle it. And musicians, again, know this. The good ones, they're not obsessed with learning to play just like someone else. They are not bothered to play just like Mozart, learning to play like Jimi Hendrix. But they are studying past virtuosos in order to learn from their understanding of the principle and laws of music, so that they themselves also can express themselves freely. Just like Mozart was expressing himself freely. So you shouldn't care so much about becoming like anybody else, but instead care about becoming yourself, or rather to learn to express yourself in accordance with the Logos and the laws and principles, who of course are not only the structure of the outer universe, but they're also the structure of your inner universe. So when you're expressing yourself according with the Logos, you can actually express yourself freely. Just like a musician who knows all the rules of music and knows all the scales can express himself freely. But that way of expressing oneself freely is very different from musician to musician. All great musicians, they do not play the same way. On the opposite, it's actually that really, really great musicians are characterized by that they have very unique styles of playing. The better they're attuned to the musical laws and principles, the more unique their playing is, because the more their own unicity is free to be expressed. And this is what is worth emulating, this freedom that comes from being aligned with the Logos. Because the truth is, you either play in tune with the laws of creation, or you suffer. There is no cheating by mimicking others. You can't take a shortcut again. You can't take a shortcut from actually learning and understanding and putting yourself in alignment with the Logos by pretending to play like someone else who already has done that. You need to find your place, and you need to find your relationship with the truth. There is more to say about this, but I want to keep these videos a bit shorter and more digestible. So we'll continue in another episode on this, with also more personal experience of these principles. And until then, hit subscribe or follow or whatever platform you're on here, so you make sure you get the next one.